Hi everybody! Today we're going to be doing our lesson on the peripheral nervous system. So before March break, we had gone over the idea of homeostasis and feedback loops. We talked about the components of feedback loops and then moved into the nervous system, where we talked about how an impulse signal is sent, what types of nerves there are, and the communication between nerves through the synapse and the synaptic cleft. Then we went over the central nervous system, which is your brain and spinal cord. We talked about which different things are controlled by which different parts of those two structures. And today is our lesson on the peripheral nervous system. So I'm hoping that this will go all right doing a note like this. You guys can let me know what you think. But I know some of you might not have like printers or things like that, so we'll try writing by hand for now. Today's lesson is pretty simple. It's not very long on the peripheral nervous system, so this is a good chance to sort of try this out. So the peripheral nervous system includes pretty much everything that's not the central nervous system. So our central nervous system consisted of the brain and the spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system, okay, is composed of all of the nerves that come out of the brain, so the cranial nerves and the spinal cord, so between all the vertebrae. So our peripheral nervous system is all the nerves coming out of the brain and spinal cord. And it's split into two major categories. So we're going to create this note by making sort of like a table. So we mentioned this really briefly at the very beginning of the unit, but we didn't really go through it. So the peripheral nervous system is split into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, or autonomic peripheral nervous system. Now the difference between these two is that your somatic nervous system is things that you're aware of. We'll write this down later on, but it's stuff that you're aware of and conscious of, decisions, things like deciding to walk across a room, versus autonomic nervous system is all the stuff that you don't think about it. I like to think of like auto reminds me of autopilot. So it's stuff that we aren't conscious that happens. So things like digesting your food, responses to stress, that kind of thing. So we'll split this up into our two categories. And I'm going to kind of color code this by sort of like cooler and lighter colors, because each of these two sections of the peripheral nervous system are further divided into two more categories. So we'll start with the somatic nervous system. So here, divided into two categories of nerves. We have our sensory, are the first type, and motor are the other type. So these are terms that we have seen before when we did our other notes. So this part is a little bit review. But our sensory nerves, so I'm going to do this in blue. Ooh, that actually kind of makes it hard to read. I'll just go around it. Okay, so our sensory nerves, these are also known as afferent nerves. Okay, and they bring signals from the sensory organs and glands to the brain. Okay, so bring info from sensory glands and organs. So it's things like your skin and your eyes. To the brain. So an example, you touch something hot, touch a burner or something. Your afferent nerves will be detecting that signal on your skin and sending that information to your brain that this is hot and could be harmful. So a useful little trick to help you remember that they're afferent nerves are your sensory nerves. Think if you touch something hot, right, you would say ah, ah, right? So ah and afferent go together. Okay, moving on to our motor neurons, part of our somatic nervous system again. These are also known as efferent nerves, so aka efferent. So afferent and efferent. Your efferent nerves do the opposite. So they take information from your brain and send it out to effector cells. So this is things like muscles and stuff to do something in response to the stimulus from the sensory nerves. So sends info from the brain to effector cells. So an example of that would be muscle cells. Oops. So if we go back to sort of our original example here, so coming over from there, it would be the signal to the muscles to move the hand away from whatever the hot thing was. So move hand away from hot surface. So a little memory trick that you can think of for this one is to escape the heat. So E and E. So the full sort of idea here being that you touch something hot, so you'd go ah, and the ah is sensing the heat going to your brain. Your brain sends the signal back to your hand to escape from whatever that surface touch was. So you're moving E, escape, E, efferent nerves, ah, afferent nerves. So again, these are all conscious. So we're aware / conscious of what happens in the somatic nervous system. And the autonomic is the stuff that we're not aware of. So switching gears here over to our autonomic peripheral nervous system. Again, this is broken down into 2 more categories. So the first is the sympathetic. And the other is the parasympathetic. Now these are ones that we haven't really talked about, but you may have heard these words before, just kind of on your own time or in your own experience. Sorry, I'll try and keep that straight. So sympathetic nervous system will be in red here. So this is something that's activated in times of stress. Okay, so activated in times of stress. So think of your fight or flight response. Okay, so certain things that will start to happen in these situations, like increased heart rate, dilating of the, or constricting, I should say, sorry, constricting of the blood vessels, increased breathing rate, all that kind of stuff. Versus your parasympathetic peripheral nervous system, so this one's going to be in orange. Okay, is sort of your, what we would sort of conversely call your rest and digest. Okay, so this is activated in times of calm, so things that would happen would be things like digestion occurs, relaxation, tearing. Your tear ducts are controlled by your parasympathetic peripheral nervous system, defecation, things like that. And so these two are things that you're not aware or not conscious of. And they happen without your, decision. So your whole autonomic side of things here is stuff that you're not aware of. So if we look at this sort of overall here, we have our peripheral nervous system breaking down into somatic and autonomic. Somatic, things we're aware of, autonomic, not aware of. To help you remember that, you can sort of put the little hint here of, I think of autopilot. Think auto from autonomic as being like autopilot, so things you're not controlling. At least not controlling consciously. Your autonomic is broken down into sympathetic and parasympathetic, so times of stress versus times of calm. Your fight or flight, this is like increased heart rate, breathing rate, that kind of thing. Versus your rest and digest of your parasympathetic system. Is when digestion occurs and when you're relaxing, things like that. Then your somatic peripheral nervous system is part of maintaining homeostasis and feedback loops, in that you have your sensory organs that are taking in information from your surroundings, sending that information to the brain, and then the brain sends a signal through the motor nerves out to the effector cells, which make whatever change occur. So what you guys are going to be doing, you'll have this note done, some practice questions on this stuff from your textbook. So this would be homework questions, page 372. You're going to do try number 28 and number 29. If you don't have your textbook, you can look up this page on the PDF link that's in the Google Drive. And page 373, try number 1, 4, and 11. And I will see you guys next Zoom class. If you have any questions, just send me an SB message or come to Extra Help. Bye!